unprecedented times is just showing that all of us are certainly in the arms of the angels. Some statistics, number of countries that are joining us today, as usual, the United States, Canada, South Africa, India, and Lebanon. Worship Brothers Myers and Beatty, kindly introduce yourself.
Greetings, brethren. My name is Arthur Myers. I'm the presiding master at Guiding Light Olympia Lodge number 808 in the Grand Lodge of the state of New York.
Good morning, brethren, or good afternoon and good evening. My name is Roger Beatty. I am the Senior Grand Steward of the Grand Lodge of Arizona.
And I'm, of course, Worship Brother Ed Gabaran from the Grand Lodge of South Africa. I'm the presiding master for Lodge Cape Town in South Africa, who is your host today. Just the rules again, for those of you who are not familiar with it. We are recording, so I'm just asking that you remain on mute if you are obviously not speaking. Just, of course, reminding our responders as well as our interviewers of time management so that we can try and keep it under 2 hours. Brethren, I will now read the opening inclination. Son of reverence. Great architect of the universe, we thank you for your grace and favor in trying in unprecedented times, and that in the absence of wisdom, strength, or beauty, there's always hope. For protecting us from this pandemic and its socioeconomic impact, we pray for its swift end, that the balance of the equilibrium in our global society be restored, and that your wisdom be upon those who are designated to navigate the world through these turbulent waters, that the families and communities impacted globally find comfort in you and each other. We pray that you bestow the manifold blessings from your inexhaustible stall upon us all, as we find our way. As we gather in your name, we pray for your guidance, that our discussions will be to the benefit of Freemasonry in general, and to the honor and glory of your holy name, so much to be. Brethren, we had all hoped that by now we would be in a better place. So before we begin, I would like to recognize the most worshipful Brother William Sodom, the Grand Master of the state of New York, who survived his COVID-19 experience, to call for a moment of reverent silence for all who have lost their lives to this pandemic, and those suffering from its economic impact worldwide, and then to declare the 10th International Masonic Town Hall open. Most worshipful Sodom.
Thank you so much for all the kind words and prayers and texts, but I have survived COVID. It was also COVID and pneumonia together. And I'm not going to go into the details of the hospitalization. There was no sedation, I had IVs, no surgery. I had IVs on my iPhone. So things stayed going while I was there. One of the residuals of COVID, as people say, is that the doctors say that it affects some of your organs. And in my case, it affected my voice box for a while. And that satisfied the Masonic world when I couldn't talk, because they had extra bandwidth that they got back on all of their times. But my voice is gradually coming back, and I thank you all for your kind texts, emails, thoughts, prayers. But I'm one of the lucky guys. Let's think of those that are still having an issue. When I left the hospital after 5 days, the guy in the room next to me was going on his 31st day. So thank you so much. Amen.
Thank you. And with that, you'll declare this town hall open.
This town hall meeting, number 10. 10 is in the books, is open. This is like Super Bowl Sunday. Number 10 is ready to go.
Thank you so much, most worshipful Brother Sodom. And I wish to acknowledge the Grand Lodges participating, Grand Lodge of South Africa, Grand Lodge of New York, Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. I think we have Vermont in Arizona, and Grand Lodge of Manitoba, Grand Lodge of Quebec, and Ontario. And of course, the Grand Lodge of Lebanon and the District Grand Lodge of Lebanon and Syria under the Grand Lodge of New York as well. I wish to acknowledge and thank senior brethren for their contribution in making the International Masonic Town Hall possible. If I miss anyone, I do apologize in advance. The Most Worshipful Brother William Sodom, Grand Master Grand Lodge of the State of New York, Most Worshipful Brother Gordon Fordeaux, Grand Master Grand Lodge of Manitoba, Most Worshipful Brother Mark C. David, Grand Master Grand Lodge of Quebec, Most Worship Brother John Smith, OSM, MSA, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of South Africa. The Most Worship Brother Richard Maggio could not join us, but we do have the Right Worshipful Brother Peter M. Culbertson, who's the Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. Most Worshipful Brother Rafi Timonian, Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Lebanon. Most Worshipful Brother Stuart Corso, Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Vermont. Most Worshipful Brother Jeff Edwards, OSM, past Grand Master and the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of South Africa. I think we have Most Worshipful Brother Plamen Mateev, who's the past Grand Master of Bulgaria. Right Worshipful Brother Randy Yeager, Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Arizona. And our Right Worshipful Brother Tariq Issa is the District Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Lebanon and Syria. Right Worshipful Brother Pratap Karan Paul, who's now the past Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of India. I think we have Most Worshipful Brother Gary S. Kaufman, who's the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island. The Most Worshipful Brother Terry Shand, who's the past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Ontario, as well as also the Grand Secretary Emeritus. And then our Right Worshipful Brother Robert Kleeman. We also have a number of Grand Wardens that are also with us. Brethren, we will now have a round of 4 topics. And Worshipful Brother Beatty, the first question is yours.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Aaron. We have all been hopeful for the Masonic restart in the first quarter of 2021. Though we anticipated a second wave, we did not anticipate a third, as is the case in some countries. Nor did we anticipate new strains, as is in the case in the United Kingdom, Brazil, and South Africa, which has led us to renewed travel bans, nor the non-existent federal vaccine stockpile and distribution plan in the U.S. or the delays globally, including South Africa, to yet acquire and distribute a vaccine successfully. With the expected resistance to vaccines worldwide, how does this impact the Masonic restart of your lodge activities in your jurisdiction? Second is the role of Freemasonry. What is your role for Freemasonry in educating people about vaccination? And will you be continuing feeding and other will you be continuing feeding and other COVID-supported initiatives for the foreseeable future? For the first answer, we'll look to the Grand Lodge of Manitoba. Most Worshipful Fardo.
No problem. I had trouble unmuting there. So greetings, brethren. It's good to see you all this morning, and I hope you're all doing well and safe. And I'm glad to hear that Most Worshipful Brother Sardone is up in here time. We would miss your dulcet tones if you were not here at a meeting if something went wrong. So to talk about what's going on at this point in time with Masonic restart of lodge activities for our jurisdiction, we're gone down to we've had a slight increase in what we can do, but we are basically under lockdown. We are not allowing travel outside the province. We are minimizing activities that are doing on. So we're just continuing to work out our rollout plan on a monthly basis to determine what we are going to do in the future. In the meantime, whatever we can conduct and do and encourage our brethren to do, with the exception of initiations, we are doing online. Last night I attended the installation of the new potentate for Khartoum Temple in Manitoba. And so there was over 70 people in attendance. Our forums, our internet education programs are increasing participation every time we do one. So there is that desire to want to be together. So as the provincial and government restrictions lighten, we will review our policies and adapt what we're going to do at this point in time when they occur. With regards to the vaccination, we possibly will play a role in that in educating our membership about what they'll need to do in getting a vaccination to return to lodge if they're coming, but nothing at this point in time because the program is just rolling out in Manitoba, and we don't have any programs we have regarding initiatives that lodges have done regarding feeding or milk programs as we do now, or we haven't discussed that aspect at this point in time of any COVID support initiatives, other than the usual benevolence that we give to our brethren who are in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Fardo. Next, we'll look for the answer from Grand Lodge of South Africa.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Beatty, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, distinguished brethren. And for those who I haven't seen and haven't spoken to, I know it's a bit belated, but a very happy new year to you. As Worshipful Brother Beatty said, South Africa has experienced a second wave. Thankfully, we've reached the peak of that, and according to the latest news this morning, the number of daily infections is on the decline. So that's very good news. We peaked at about almost between 19 and 20,000 per day, and we're down to 6,000. So we've got a way to go. In the meantime, the government has put us into a level 3 restriction. So we're very much in lockdown as Worshipful Brother Fardo in Manitoba is. But having said that, we've embarked on a project to qualify a large number of our members as COVID compliance officers. In fact, the instruction has been that all the Grand Lodge officers, all the provincial Grand Lodge officers, and all the masters and wardens of lodges, at least them, will be trained up in the next couple of weeks and will be accredited as COVID compliance officers. So when we do eventually restart, and we hope that that will be sooner than later, that we will be able to at least restart with the knowledge that our senior brethren in lodges, in province, and in Grand Lodge will know how to ensure that the members are safe. We've also, as we spoke last year, we've now in our final draft of our special amended COVID rituals for installations and the first and second degrees. And we're hoping that these will be able to, we could implement these even before we get to a complete restart. As far as vaccinations are concerned, unfortunately, South Africa had a bit of a bumpy start. And instead of receiving vaccinations early on in the year, we're only starting to receive the vaccinations now in February. However, there's been quite a bit of excitement because there's a product, many of you might know it, called ivermectin. It's in fact a veterinarian product which can be used by human beings in a different format. And it's extremely cheap, and the authorities have now approved the use of that through obviously a prescription of a doctor. So, you know, my wife wanted to know if she could take some Bob Martin tablets that we give our dog, if that would work. And I said to her, no, just wait for vaccination or the ivermectin. You know, although you'll have a nice coat, I don't think it'll quite work. As far as proceeding with our COVID initiatives, we embarked on a feeding scheme last year where we collected money and we purchased a porridge product, which was very nutritious, and we were very lucky to be able to feed 3,000, eventually 3,000 orphans for about 100 days. So, you know, we worked that out to a large number of meals that we could give them. And we're hoping that our lodges will continue with that. But brethren, it's early days, and I think, you know, the main thing is that we must be positive. We've been all in lockdown now for almost a year, and it's got to end sometime. And in South Africa, we're going to be ready that when we do end, that we'll be ready to commence our Masonic labors. I thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Smith. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Bulgaria.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Brother Vidi. Dear Most Worshipful, Right Worshipful for Brothers, the Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons in Bulgaria, as you know from our previous sessions at the International Masonic Town Hall, we have managed to prepare hybrid options and model of a regular lodge meeting, and it is already in practice in our Grand Lodge. All measures and requirements of the health authorities are met, and we have not changed the essential part of the ritual work for the first degree. We have invited for comments and views brothers from North America and Europe. We await their input in order to share what we have done with the brothers from Asia, Africa, Australia, South America. In the meantime, we are preparing for the second degree and all accompanying activities for it. We assume that until the end of March 2021, we will have reactivated the work for the 3 degrees. Members of the Grand Lodge participate in all bodies participating in the vaccination, and they have the full support and the resources of the Grand Lodge for their work. The education of the society is in coherence with the work done by the Bulgarian Red Cross, with whom we work on a national scale. We do see a delay concerning the Bulgarian development of the Masonic Emergency Response Team. It's an initiative which were delayed really, and we need to speed up. We thank for support from the Grand Lodges we have mentioned in our previous sessions at this online event. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Mateev. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Lebanon.
Worshipful BD, thank you. Seems like we all either know of somebody, a relative, a friend, an acquaintance who either went through COVID or is going through COVID right now. It seems to be touching almost everyone in the entire world. It's unfortunate. So my condolences to all those who lost a dear friend or an acquaintance, and my prayers for a fast recovery to all those who are going through this. Towards the end of the year, things were looking kind of okay in Lebanon. So we decided to resume our meetings with naturally observing social distancing and all that stuff. So minimum amount of people, just the necessary things in the lodges. And then New Year's came. And our government, for some reason, I still don't understand why, allowed certain functions to go on. By functions, I mean festivities for New Year's. And that actually caused a lot of problems come the first 2 weeks of January. We had thousands of people infected. So currently we stand at 296,000 cases in Lebanon. Thankfully, 175,000 recovered. But unfortunately, we lost 2,680 people. But this is a country of 5 million. So coming back to the lodges, so our lodges are closed. The country went on a first lockdown up to January 7th, 8th, I believe, and then they did another lockdown right now, a very strict lockdown where nobody's allowed to be on the streets other than with a permit from the security forces. And that permit, you have to specify exactly where you're going and what you're going to do. Supermarkets are closed, everything's closed, only delivery is being utilized to get food and whatnot to the people. So that right now, as we said, it is going to be through to the 8th of February. After that, right now there are talks about extending it. So the situation is not looking good at all for us, and I don't know how we're going to get out of it. There were promises that we were going to have vaccinations and vaccines delivered to Lebanon no later than January 15. Now they're talking about February, March. They were talking about 500,000 doses to begin with. Now they're talking about 20, 30,000 a week, which is a disaster. So what are we doing? We're going back to, Masonic speaking, we're going back to our Zoom meetings, and we're going to do that, and no meetings at all until further notice. That's my instructions. What are we doing to educate people about vaccination? On the 26th of January, this past Tuesday, we hosted Dr. Oscar Alain, who is an expert in this, and actually Worshipful Myers was with us. And for the first time, we did not expect this, but for the first time, we had a kind of nice problem to face, which was we capped at 100 people. I know I actually have a list of names, over 30 people who couldn't join us because of that restriction. And Dr. Asghar Alain, who is the Right Worshipful Junior Grand Warden of the Grand Lodge of the State of New York, he was kind enough to go over in the COVID in general, and then went over all the vaccines that are available out there, because there's a lot of uncertainty about the vaccines, as you all know. I don't want to waste your time too much, but that's what we're doing. We're going to continue doing. Our next step would be, we decided to have another one with unlimited participation. We have a system to do that, and we're going to go with, we're going to make this public. So it's going to be hosted by the Grand Lodge of Lebanon, but it will be public. It will be open to anybody who wants to attend, who wants to learn more about the vaccines that are out there. The conflict is whether we take this one or that one, complications, if somebody has allergy, pre-existing conditions. There's a lot of questions that one doesn't think of, but I guess people, according to their situation, they have to go through that. And that's what we're going to be doing. And hopefully that would be the last one. I'm really looking forward to this, but unfortunately, it's looking like we're going to go probably through spring with this, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Timian. The next response from the Grand Lodge of New York.
Thank you very much. New York is doing a little bit better. By the way, I was very interested in that potion from that the veterinarians use. I wonder if I get it, if I have to like go out at night and pee in the yard before I go to bed. I don't know, but that'd be interesting to see. The New York, we have a governor, and every morning the governor gets on and he tells you what color zone you live in. And you can be in a red zone. If you're in a red zone, you're in the no good zone. The red zone means you don't do anything. If you're in another color zone, you have an opportunity. The entire state has turned into zones where people can actually go out and do things and gather in mass gatherings. In some cases, houses of worship up to 50%. There's even a zone color called clear, and some of them are that. So what I've done is I have released the zone and applications of what lodges can do to the masters. And if the master's lodge is in a zone that can have 25 people, then they can have 25 people at their lodges. And I announced that on my webinar the other night. And there were many things that I announced on the webinar. I think that was the only thing they remembered. And they're thrilled. But they still have to be socially distanced. They still have to wear masks. They still have to sanitize. I told them also, don't go over it, because there's people who go around counting cars to see who's where, and they call the police. The police come, they come and raid, and we've had a number of parties that have gone on and has 75, 100 people illegally, and the cops go in and they arrest people and whatever. I don't need people arrested at Masonic lodges for doing stuff. So right now they are to do this, and the big deal is that we can go back to have degrees. We're bursting at the seams of members that want to join. And now we have a pandemic ritual that we have adapted where there's no contact, and they can utilize that to induct their members. So they are thrilled with that. And so far, it's going to go good. In March, the governor is going to allow weddings up to 150 people. So who knows what's going to happen after the weddings go, and there's a few drinks that are there, and who knows what's going to happen if people start spreading it again and we go back to closing it in. As far as the vaccinations go, I'm not pushing anything. The media is like crazy with it. It's all over the papers. It's all over everything. You can lead a horse to water. It's hard to make them all drink it. The other issue we have is that some of the dosages are not available when the people show up to get the shot as well. So this thing's going to work eventually. It's going to get out there. And then one of the reasons I don't push the vaccination thing is I actually have people who are anti-mask people. I had somebody write me a letter that I was rolling over for COVID, and I let it run our lives. And COVID is nothing more than the flu. And in some cases, that's true. And in some cases, you go in the hospital. So if anybody's going to complain to me about COVID, save your bandwidth and go after the conspiracy theory that we didn't land on the moon or something, because I know firsthand COVID does exist. But the vaccinations, I'm letting the media and everything else take care of it. We're really not pushing it through here. The knowledge is out there. It's real. So that's where we stand here in New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Stardome. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, brothers, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Right Worshipful Peter Culbertson. I'm the Deputy Grand Master of Massachusetts, and thank you for having me here. So the lodge activities in Massachusetts are sort of limited by what the governor is saying we're allowed. Currently, we're allowed groups of no more than 10. We're hoping the governor makes his reports bi-weekly, and we're expecting to be able to go up to groups of 25. So right now, lodges are opening, but it's generally just the officers. We're not doing degree work, but we really haven't missed too much of a beat here in Massachusetts, in the sense that, as I'm sure it was the case with all of you, everything went online. And it's been very benefit to us in some ways, is that we have a lot of brothers that live out of our jurisdictions. For example, I have 3 or 4 brothers that have moved to Oklahoma, Florida, and Texas from my mother lodge on Nantucket, Massachusetts. And they show up at the meetings, and we haven't seen them in 10, 15 years since they moved away. So that's a benefit to this. And it's our plan to, for at least a little while after we're allowed to meet in larger groups, to continue to have the cameras in the lodge room so that those brothers can continue to attend. We certainly won't do that if we're doing any degree work or anything along those lines, but for the business meetings and the social parts of our meetings, we're going to carry that on. As far as vaccinations go, I will mimic what Most Worshipful Brother Sardone said. We're not taking a stance on that. We believe our brothers are educated men and they're going to make their own choices, and it's not really our place to push people or anybody to do something. They need to make their own choices on that. We will lead by example. I know the Grand Master is scheduled to get his vaccination at the earliest possible time. I will probably not be entitled to one at my age until sometime mid to late summer, but continuing our COVID initiatives, all Masonry is local. And so most of those initiatives have been done by local lodges. And we will encourage them to continue that within the length of their personal cable toes. On a statewide level, most of our initiatives are just expanded versions of what we already do. So we'll just continue on with those things. Thank you. Listening to the rest of your responses and learning from you.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Culbertson. Next response is from the Grand Lodge of Vermont.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Bede, and greetings all brethren in all your grades and stations from the state of Vermont. We cannot have lodge meetings in Vermont. Our governor has basically closed down any social gatherings from people outside of your pods or your family groups. So we cannot have meetings as of yet. I've tried to encourage the different lodges to have Zoom meetings when they can. Some are having them, some are not comfortable with Zoom. But I'm trying to encourage that. I'm trying to encourage them to do educational meetings via the Zoom to try to learn all the different lectures of the different degrees and to try to do Masonic education to try to keep us active. And I've allowed them to practice their ritual over the Zoom so that when we can open up, they'll be ready to go. In terms of the vaccination, we also are not pushing that. We have the media in Vermont is really getting out the word for the vaccination. Our communities are having vaccination centers in the school gymnasiums and in health centers around the state. We're a very small state, very rural, and we got hit pretty hard over the last couple of months, but we seem to be plateauing, so that's a good sign. Trying to see what the last question is. Oh, yes. Yes, we're trying to keep going with the COVID initiatives that we have to help brethren in need. And to help people in the communities that are in need because of the COVID. And today I won't be able to stay for this entire meeting. I have to leave just before 10 o'clock to meet with my district deputy grand masters. And we're at that meeting, one of the topics that's going to come up is, should we help our blue lodges that are in financial difficulty because of the COVID? Many of our blue lodges raise money with breakfasts, bingo, different ways that they raise money to fill out their financial needs. So because of the COVID, they can't do these public meetings. So we're going to discuss that, whether the Grand Lodge should help these struggling lodges. I think I've covered everything. So thank you, brethren. And I'll end now.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Corso. If I don't get to say goodbye, have a great afternoon. Next response from the Grand Lodge of Quebec is Most Worshipful Davida.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother BD.
Yes, yes.
Greetings, brethren, from the Grand Lodge of Quebec. We're continuing our online activities. We too are in a semi-form of shutdown. We have a curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. In the province. And so we're very much trying to support the online activities among the lodges. We have a centralized Grand Lodge education program that is quite active as well. From a vaccination standpoint, we have one of our physician brethren who will be giving a conference in English and French on vaccines, just to provide our brethren with an educated position on vaccination. From an activity standpoint, we ran a food drive in January where we set up drop-off points across the province where brethren could supply dry goods as well as cash. And we'll be having a second one in February as well. So overall, as a jurisdiction, of course, we're concerned about keeping the brethren engaged, and through our district deputy grand masters, we're staying on top of the individual lodge activities. From a helping standpoint, just to follow up on what Most Worshipful Brother Corso said, we actually gave the lodges a rebate on their annual assessments. So the January assessment, we only asked for half. So that was to just illustrate that because our budgets, our spend was much lower during the COVID period, that to remain consistent with the usage of funds, have a surplus, we give it back to the lodges. Thank you, Worshipful Brother Beatty.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Ontario. Is Most Worshipful Cameron here?
I don't see him here, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Terry Shand, past
Yes.
Grandmaster. I suppose I can give a reply if you'd like. From a Masonic point of view, the Grand Master has directed that lodges remain closed until April 30th. In the interim, our Grand Lodge committees are holding virtual education meetings throughout the province. Each of our district deputy Grand Masters have also district meetings of education. The one that I belong to, the district that I'm involved with, has one every Monday night. And it's been growing from 60 members. And last Monday was the 34th Monday meeting. And there were 125 that attended the virtual meeting. From a Grand Lodge point of view, our annual communication in July will not take place physically. It will be a virtual meeting, and we are adjusting all of our computer ware to look after an election of district deputy Grand Masters and Grand Lodge offices online. So that's from a Masonic point of view. From a civil point of view, Ontario has increased its lockdown to a stay-at-home directive. And so you're only permitted to leave home for groceries, medical supplies, and the like. That basically is the situation in Ontario.
Thank you, Most Worshipful, for stepping in. And for the last response on this question, Right Worshipful Paul from the Grand Lodge of India.
Greetings, brethren, from Grand Lodge of India. The numbers have been coming down in India. Vaccinations are on from the 16th of this month. Though with the population we have, we will be taking some time to cover the entire population. Lockdowns have been progressively removed, and we are beginning to meet physically with strict protocols as stipulated by both local jurisdictions and the Grand Lodge of India. Lodges have begun to meet, that's the good thing, and brethren have been able to socialize within the parameters prescribed. As far as the vaccination is concerned, as has been discussed, whole lot of pluses, minuses, but we have left it to the individual brethren to take their own call. And I think the doctors are playing their role in educating the brethren in the necessity of the vaccinations. As far as the feeding and the COVID support initiatives, the Grand Lodge had already issued directives that all charity initiatives would be directed towards COVID and COVID relief. And this is continuing till such time that we come out of this situation. And a belated New Year greeting to all of you, brethren. Stay safe.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Paul. Our next topic concerns Freemasonry's role in the global economic restart. This pandemic has impacted all areas of our lives, and the economic impact has caused the highest unemployment numbers worldwide in history. The St. Louis Fed report suggests the 1918 influenza caused reduction in human capital for those individuals in utero during the epidemic, therefore having implications on economic activity occurring decades after the pandemic, leading to the Great Depression, which was 1929 to 1933, 8 years after the Spanish flu, which was 1918-19. With this precedent, does Freemasonry have a moral obligation to preemptively facilitate and support an economic restart among our members? And I'll first turn to the Grand Lodge of Manitoba for a reply.
Thank you. Yes, I think we do have an obligation to facilitate and support economic restart, especially with our members. It's like the scenario that we talk about. You've probably heard the phrase "buy local." If there's ways we can do this, that we can be supportive of our members' businesses or activities or local organizations, we should make every effort to try and do that without putting a burden on ourselves at this point in time. But I think there's going to be tremendous change when we get back to some sense of normalcy at this point in time, where many of the businesses that we are used to seeing are struggling now and won't be here at this point in time. And we need to keep the ones that are struggling to try and keep them in existence and support them even more so when we're able to do things in person. For the longest time, Winnipeg, the capital city of Manitoba, I use this as an example, had the largest number of per capita restaurants in the world. And of course, many of them are shutting down or having to reevaluate what they're doing because they can't exist in these because the meetings that they can't bring into the customers, they can't bring into the restaurants. They're adapting, and we will have. It's the same way with some of the other businesses that we will all have to adapt and work on this, and really be supportive and create an awareness of what our brethren are doing, so we can support them at this point in time, and when the time comes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Pardo. Now I'd like to call on the Grand Lodge of South Africa.
Thank you, Worship Brother Myers, and greetings, brethren. I must admit I was horrified at the story of Most Worshipful Brother Bill Sardone. We also had our immediate past Grand Master spending a couple of weeks in hospital with COVID, and the lesson that comes out of it, brethren, is that this pandemic bypasses none of us. We are all waiting there and frantically trying to make sure that we avoid getting drawn into the middle of it. And it is an horrific experience. South Africa as a country, as you well know, is like most of the countries in Africa, is relatively poor. And the problem that we had, of course, is that a very high percentage of our population was existing just above the breadline, and that with the pandemic, a great number of them have dropped below the breadline. And while the government is doing what it can to assist, it is a very real problem. We are having significant drops in employment, and a large number of our brethren, of course, are drawn into that. And we've been looking at ways and means in which we can assist this. We're not in the position where we could financially support them to any great extent. We certainly do what we can. But what we did realize is that we have a very large number of extremely talented brethren in our organization, be they lawyers, be they sales training people, be they accountants, investment managers, et cetera, et cetera. And what we have done, we've set up a new entrepreneurs forum where we run regular meetings and training sessions where we include everybody that wishes to take part. Now, we don't limit that to the members of our organization. So if outside brethren or outside people would like to join us in that, they're welcome to do so. And what we're trying to do is to assist them with skills that will enable them to get back on their feet when this thing gets behind us. I believe that we will make a difference, and it's an ongoing thing. The first one they had was on sales. The next one was on raising capital in South Africa, and there's a number of others to follow. And I think that's going to make a big. I also have to tell you that our individual brethren are making a significant difference wherever they can. We have, for example, a number of politicians in our organization. And I've been extremely proud to watch the way that they've conducted themselves in terms of intervening and assisting in the challenges that we faced over the last months and the type of contributions that they're making towards the future. This thing is not going to go away quickly. Even when the pandemic is behind us, we are still going to be fighting a lot of the challenges that we have today. The reality of people battling to get back on their feet is going to continue. And I believe that we will be continuing to try to assist them as we have done and we are doing at the moment. Most Worshipful, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Edwards. I'd like to turn to Grand Lodge of Bulgaria for your response, please.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Mars. The Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons in Bulgaria is open and support all brothers that have asked for help from it in the view of economic rebuilding. However, we have no information in what way we can coordinate our efforts with the worldwide chain of Freemason lodges. We await from the Grand Lodges with a lot more history from ours to offer us a ways of techniques to have mutual economic activities with brothers from other Grand Lodges. We do not know if the mechanism for recognition of the Grand Lodge scale will again be the one deciding who to work with whom. Currently, there are some education initiatives where the recognition concept plays the role on the tailor outside of the shrine of knowledge. We have troubles in explaining to the brothers why some of the education initiatives require the recognition concept rather than the concept of brother to brother. This concerns us if we are to start explaining the same thing to our brothers when it comes down to the international economic cooperation among brothers. If again the concept of recognition will be the key factor. These actions cannot and must not remain local. They have to be international. Thank you, Most Worshipful.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Mateev. And I'd like to turn to the Grand Lodge of Lebanon, Most Worshipful Rafi. It's good to see you again twice in 1 week.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be seen. Worshipful Myers, I appreciate that. Thank you. The economy in Lebanon, typically, under normal circumstances, relies on the medical industry, tourism, banking. The port of Beirut was the main hub for all transit shipments through Lebanon to the neighboring countries. I wish I could say that our economy is impacted due to COVID. That would have been nice because at the end of the day, COVID will go away relatively soon. I'm hoping, at least. I'm an optimistic person, so with maybe a few months. But our problem in Lebanon is much bigger than that. We have a very severe political issues that we're dealing with. Currently, we don't have a government, and it's a mess. We lost our port on the 4th of August. So the situation, to say the least, is miserable, economically speaking. So what are we doing about that? So as Grand Lodge of Lebanon, in cooperation with the District Grand Lodge of Syria Lebanon under New York, with the actual blessings and help of Grand Lodge of New York, we've established a lot of ways to help our brothers. So we have a virtual desk that not only helps helps any Mason or anybody who knows about any person, not necessarily Mason, that requires help, whatever that the nature of that help is. We immediately jump and we help, no questions asked. We created the Helping Hands of Lebanon, which is a nonprofit organization registered with the government of Lebanon that is actually out there providing food rations, helping with construction, and as well as monetary, actual physical cash that we are giving to people in need to get over this crisis. We are also recently we created a virtual help desk that is dedicated to jobs. So anybody who knows of any job opportunity, regardless whether it's unfortunately outside Lebanon as well, because like I said before, to find a new job right now in Lebanon is sort of difficult. And what is really ironic is that the only jobs that we can find in Lebanon are related to nonprofit organizations that are coming to Lebanon to help Lebanese people. So those are the only job opportunities that we have right now, which is really sad for a country like Lebanon. But we're going to continue doing this, and we're hoping that there will be we can actually see light at the end of the tunnel. It's just that the tunnel is quite far, so it's kind of deep. But there is light after all. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Dominion. And I'll now turn to Grand Lodge of New York, Most Worshipful Sardone.
Thank you very much. It's difficult for, I think, Grand Lodge to impact the economic return when we have our governments pumping $1 trillion plus into trying to give relief packages to individuals. It doesn't trickle down to be too much, but they're looking to give a couple $1,000s to each individual depending on their economic status. So what we are doing here in the Grand Lodges is, first of all, we have an open type of forum where anybody can write in and type what they want, and if they're looking for a job, if they're looking for assistance, they can. We also have this thing where they can come directly to the Grand Master if they need assistance, and we've had that. Sadly, the assistance is not for money. The assistance is things for, like, I need to bury my husband, things of that nature. And we've raised a lot of money in this Brotherhood Fund, thanks to the members, and we use it for that. And we're really not, I don't know if it's really helping the economic part of what we're trying to do to restore, but it's difficult when you live in the city of New York and the state of New York to make a dent in what they need. So we're continuing with giving food. We're actually doing clothing again. And clothing was like a no-no. You don't give clothing because the virus travels on clothing. And what we've arranged for is to have the clothing all dry cleaned before we wind up giving it to a food drive, a clothing drive, or individuals. So I guess in a reverse sort of manner, we're helping the economy by helping the individuals who live within the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Chardon, and it's good to see you back in the saddle. Keep up the good work. I'd like to call on the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts now.
Good morning again, brothers. Well, at the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, as I said earlier, I mean, we have a strong belief here that all Masonry is local. Recruit their community and bring them into the fold. And so as far as the economic restart goes, I feel that a lot of our lodges are very good about supporting each other. And I think that will continue on a grassroots level. We also, much like the Grand Lodge of New York, have a very large Brotherhood Fund, and a lot of our members who are struggling have contacted the Brotherhood Fund, and we'll help them out financially within the length of our cable tow. A lot of that is joined with the Almoners Fund from the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. And so we're very hopeful that things go on, but I will again echo Brother Sardone that there's very little that we can do as a Grand Lodge level because the state and the federal governments are doing so many much bigger things that we couldn't begin to match. And so what we're really doing is we're encouraging our lodges to look within and support each other and their membership within their own communities. Thank you again.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Culbertson. I'd like to call on Grand Lodge of Quebec. Most Worshipful David, please.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Myers. Yeah, so the Grand Lodge of Quebec, we've, at the beginning of the pandemic, what we did is we sent out a communique to the brethren to inform them on the various government programs. Like others have said, from a financial standpoint, it's difficult to compete with the subsidies that are provided by the government, but we tried to at least make the brethren aware of what existed. We have, or I have a dedicated Grandmaster account where if brethren need help, if they feel shy or embarrassed to contact their lodges, they can contact me directly, and we have access to a benevolent fund that we can use to help them. From a 30,000 foot level, our education program is now working on self-development content in the area of leadership and various self-development aspects that the brethren can apply to their professional sectors. So that's where the Grand Lodge of Quebec is trying to help brethren succeed through the pandemic period. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful David. And I'd like now to call on the Grand Lodge of Ontario.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, very good.
Oh, good. From a Masonic point of view, about 500 plus lodges throughout the province, we're finding that those buildings that had rented premises that kept them going financially and don't have that facility now are finding that they're selling their properties and moving to another lodge in a local area to hold their meetings. Membership has not really increased from a benevolence point of view. The requests coming in that I'm aware of. Many of the lodges do provide food drives on a volunteer basis within their local communities. We're seeing a number of surrendering of charters in lodges due to their membership drops. and we're seeing a number of amalgamations. The Grand Lodge itself, as somebody mentioned before, the expenses have been somewhat less. However, because of the reduction in members, there is a need, I think, this year, a proposal to actually increase Grand Lodge assessments. So we'll see what that impact will have. But generally speaking, one of the disappointing things that I heard from a local individual, I believe on television, talking about pandemics, and he was reflecting upon the Spanish flu and World War I and the recovery economically from that. And he said that it took from then, which was in the late 1919s, until a depression in the 1930s before the economy really got back on track. And I hope that's not the case in this instance, but it's something that we should consider, I suppose, from a Masonic point of view. That would be it. I'm doing this off the cuff, so please.
No, very good, Most Worshipful. Very good. Thank you. Very sobering conversation. I'd like to call on the Grand Lodge of India right now. The Worshipful Paul.
Thank you, Brother Myers. As mentioned by Most Worshipful Brother Sardone and a few others, essentially an economic restart would need to come from the state. And given India's size and the population, whatever the authorities do may or may not be enough to cover the entire gamut of the population. From our part, I would say that we would need to be emotionally involved in this economic restart and ensure that brethren in need, which we are going to be seeing in the future, and this is already happening at the large levels where there is subscriptions are being reduced, etc. We do hope to be part of the movement and ensure that things get back onto an even keel. And given the fact that India is a developing economy, signs of activity are already back. It's chock-a-block traffic as usual. So hopefully things will be back to normal very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Paul. On a side note, I'd just like to say that I had my first dose of the vaccine about 3 weeks ago. No side effects. I have the next one coming up shortly. Hope it continues that way. So on that note, there's hope on the end of the tunnel there. I'll pass it over to Brother Beatty right now.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Myers. I am unmuted. Next question. Moving to the United States. January 6th is the day that will live on in infamy when thousands of Americans marched on the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another. A similar principle that exists in Freemasonry. A number of Grand Lodges in the U.S. transmitted communications condemning this action. Does Freemasonry, beyond the limitations of our order, have a moral duty to educate and stay engaged with the profane regarding civil disobedience and social responsibility? The first responder, Most Worshipful Fardeau, Grand Lodge of Manitoba.
Well, thank you, Brother Beatty. Absolutely we do in this point in time. We take an obligation to obey or to respect the government of the day, and civil disobedience is never tolerated. Peaceful demonstration and diverse opinions is always welcome, but there is no way at this point in time that we should be involved in this activity, and we should be cautious and watch if there are brethren who are promoting this type of activity as well. This is civil disobedience is not a part of our obligation, and we have to remind our members when we get into situations like this that we have an obligation that we have taken and upheld, and to maintain that obligation. So I don't even think there's any question about this, and that's our social responsibility is to be informed. And if there are issues, again, peaceful demonstration and differing opinion is always welcome, but certainly civil disobedience is not tolerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. I believe the next answer is from the Grand Lodge of South Africa. Most Worshipful Smith, you're up.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Beatty. I agree 100% with Worshipful Brother Fardeau. Of course, we have a model obligation, and in the Grand Lodge of South Africa, our members also take an obligation, not directly dealing with you will not take part in civil disobedience, but it's part of our preamble, it's part of our landmarks, it's certainly part of the whole concept of the Grand Lodge of South Africa that you will obey the rule of law. You may not agree with the ruling party, or you may not agree with their principles. Fortunately, we have not had any incidents of civil disobedience by our members in a physical form. However, there have been a couple of incidents where brethren have become a bit vocal on social media. And that resulted in us having to adopt a more stringent social media policy. And in fact, addressing these brethren, and once we had pointed out the error of their ways, I'm happy to say that most of them were quite remorseful and promised and undertook that they wouldn't do so again. But I also agree that we, as the leaders of our Grand Lodge and senior brethren, need to keep a very watchful eye. And if someone disagrees vehemently, then if he wants to do that on his own, then let him do that on his own. But he mustn't bring Freemasonry into disrepute by advertising his own political views on the basis that he's a member of a lodge or a Grand Lodge or even a provincial Grand Lodge, obviously. So I agree that certainly Freemasonry does have a model obligation to assist our brethren, to not involve their own political views with Freemasonry. Thank you, Worshipful Brother Beatty.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Bulgaria, Most Worshipful Mateev.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Beatty. The Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons in Bulgaria sees this is a very important, painful, and sensitive question. Some Grand Lodges reacted, of course. We are also reacting long time ago by participating in the different Masonic civility organizations, generally in civility. But with this participation, or without this, every form of vandalism, which means the destruction of values, cultural, material, moral, judicial ones, is not accepted by the brothers in the Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of Bulgaria. We educate our members that they provide goodwill because a good man becomes better when he makes a good stuff. We are ready to commend every other position, but we cannot remain indifferent. And we see demolished and abused monuments of Albert Pike, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, nor to turn a blind eye for the Masonic halls around the world that were set on fire. We must have a ready-made position about this, not to wait to be happened, and after that to react. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Lebanon, Most Worshipful Timonian.
Thank you, sir. Freemasonry teaches us by its own principles to actually respect each other's opinions. It teaches us about freedom. It teaches us about freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of worship, and all these freedoms that we enjoy in most of the countries in the world. Civil disobedience, what does that mean exactly? It's a group of people who disagree with what is going on. So that does not always come clean. Sometimes we have vandalism, we have this, we have that. There has to be a very distinct difference between what Freemasonry as a body can do and what Freemasons can do. Throughout history, we've been known as, the Freemasons were behind the revolution in France. Not true. Freemasons, some Freemasons were participating, not Freemasonry. Freemasons were involved in the Civil War in the United States during the Civil War. Not true, not Freemasonry. Freemasons were. So there are a lot of Freemasons who believe that they wanna have a change in their whatever government, whatever country they're in, and they're free to do so as long as they do it respectfully and they do it without actually creating a lot of damage. What happened on the 6th of January? I was supposed to be celebrating Armenian Christmas. But instead, I was sitting in front of the TV and watching this, and I was very surprised that something like this was happening in the United States, where people are free to go on the streets and demonstrate and have protestations and civil protestations. What happened was not really acceptable in any book, and it's just not Masonic or non-Masonic. This is as human beings, as civilized human beings, we shouldn't have done this. Not in a country where democracy comes first. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. Next response from the Grand Lodge of New York and Most Worshipful Sardone.
Thank you very much. Being retired from the United States Army as a Master Sergeant, I certainly had opinions. No doubt. But what I did is I put out a simple statement to my members. Simple statement was, we have laws, we have ballot boxes, we have a process. You don't like the laws, you don't like the people who get elected, we have a process. Same thing as in Grand Lodge. You don't like what we have a process to elect and change and make the changes that we need. So I left it just right there. You know, we placed our hand on a Bible. We have sworn to many different things: love of God, love of home, love of country. And I didn't think I needed to make a big deal about it. What I was happy for, I didn't see any Masonic hats in the crowd. I went, that was something that I was happy with. That's all I had to do, is see somebody out there with a Masonic emblem on. Then it would have been another problem. But I didn't see any, but it was bad enough as it was. And I left it that we have a process to do things peacefully. And by the way, I'm on with Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York at the same time in my other ear here. So if you wondered why I stood up before, it was because they had the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Sardone. Thanks for joining us. Next response from the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, Right Worshipful Culbertson.
Thank you, brother. So civil disobedience is a tricky subject. We certainly don't condone it here in Massachusetts, and the events of January 6th were not pleasurable to watch for anybody. I guess globally, I never really considered it as a global thing until this meeting, I don't think. But, you know, we do take all those obligations to obey the civil magistrate, to respect our government. And so when things like that happen, it's unfortunate. As a grand, we did not come out and make statements as other Grand Lodge about the event itself, because it's my belief, and I believe our Grand Master's belief too, that if you're going to take a side, you're going to alienate 50% of the people in all things. And the events of January 6th might be a little exception because those were extreme. But on a local level, we certainly expect more from that from our brothers. And if a brother were to have been found to be there, we would be having conversations with him about that. With that said, I very much liked what the Grand Master of Lebanon had to say, that there's a difference between Freemasons being involved and Freemasonry being involved. Those words I will take home with me today. Another one of the Grand Masters talked about social media, and we have, and that's something that we're very careful with in Massachusetts. Because once you post your picture on a Facebook page or an Instagram page or something like that, where you're wearing an apron, where you have linked yourself to our fraternity. And so at that point in time, if you start making political statements, it becomes a concern to us, because other people in the photograph, and they won't link it to a Freemason's opinion. They'll link it to Freemasonry's opinion. And so we have a very strong social media policy in Massachusetts. And I myself have made about 6 or 7 phone calls in the last 10 weeks to brothers asking them if they could please remove some very inflammatory posts that they had, because there's very strong opinions on this. So I hope that answers the question on how we stand in Massachusetts on that. And I thank you again.
Thank you, Right Worshipful. Appreciate it. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Quebec, Most Worshipful David.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Beatty. Yes, I, of course, agree with what has been said. From our perspective, we've been trying to work very hard on a structured public relations program to educate the public on basically the tenets of Freemasonry and our moral position in general. So we've got a very strict approval process. We have a very strong committee working on that, and a very specific media plan on television, radio, and newsprint. Again, just to communicate about who we are and what we do and what we believe in, without getting into specific discussions on events. Internally, as other jurisdictions, we have a social media policy. Events like this give us an opportunity to remind the brethren of their obligations and the importance that, of course, they have freedom of thought, but they don't necessarily have freedom of communicating certain perspectives because they are Masons and they have taken an obligation. And if they don't agree with that, I'm very pleased to remove them of that burden if they wish. On a bit of a sideline subject, we have a brother who's involved with the local police force, and he looks at strategic planning and events. And one of the things he warned me about, at least to be open, is they are very much following the activities of the Quanon group, and how they've targeted the Jewish population as well as Freemasonry. And I took good note of that, and ironically, a week later, our Grand Lodge was vandalized with graffiti and cues all over the place. So it's just something for the brethren to be aware of, that this is a movement that has caused concern among the police force here locally. And so obviously we have to be aware of that and make sure our brethren are also aware of those types of activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. The next response from the Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario, Most Worshipful Shand.
Brethren, I did have a personal philosophical sort of thought on the subject. And it was, while each of us are obligated to refrain from discussion of matters political, we are indeed encouraged as Masons to engage in our respective communities. Specific information regarding one of our teachings might serve to provide reflection. That is, where conflict exists, step back and retire to attempt to settle one's differences amicably. Once achieved, peacefully reunite with a compromised solution. A tall order indeed with this particular civil disorder. When dealing with a diverse society of varying ideology and division that exists today there. And it exists all over the countrysides, everywhere. So it's a tall order indeed. But I said to myself, the longest of journeys starts with the first step. So let's hope our steps going forward will come to some form of resolution as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. And finally, the Grand Lodge of India, Right Worshipful Paul.
Thank you, Brother Beat. The incidents of January 6th were quite a surprise, and a peaceful or a supposedly peaceful protest degenerated into acts of violence, occupying the capital, etc. Without going into the details of the incident, it showed clearly the divisions in the population. Now, we are taught in Freemasonry that we owe allegiance to the Constitution of the country. And whatever our political thoughts are, though we are also taught to think deeply, as mentioned by Brother Shand, that we should be able to draw that line where we don't go beyond a point, and differing opinions are looked at in an amicable settlement of facts. We are taught to completely desist from political discussions in our meetings and in the dinners which follow. And this could be part of the reason why we have faced discrimination as an organization which has got secrets and hence is involved in subversive activities because our activities are not known outside. So we have to be very careful how we tread around these areas, and our political opinions, in my personal opinion, should be kept to ourselves and should not go beyond a point where it leads to inflammatory actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Paul. We'll move on to our next topic now, which is the Freemasonry's contribution to future generations. Linda Creed wrote in 1976, "I believe that children are the future." And Neil Postman wrote, "Children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see." Both meaning well, it is the later's position on the negative influence of technology on society that begs the question, apart from De Molay, Job's Daughters, and Rainbow, what is Freemasonry doing to influence those people, young people, who will never join our fraternity to be contributing global citizens? For this topic, we would like to give the Grand Lodge of Quebec an opportunity to present a program they are pioneering, and then we'll turn it over to our usual respondents. So let's start with the Grand Lodge of Quebec right now.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Myers. Yes, brethren, well, thanks. I'd like to thank Worshipful Brother Barron for the opportunity to speak a little bit here on an initiative from one of our brethren. At the 9th International Masonic Town Hall, we talked about how jurisdictions contribute to the general development and advancement of humanity. And in this subject, we're talking about how we may be able to influence young people. So in this context, we've invited a brother from our jurisdiction. His name is Brother Stephen Gregory, who also happens to be the brother who initiated me into Freemasonry a little over 30 years ago. So Brother Gregory on his own has an initiative within which we think there's an opportunity for us to show a combined international Masonic effort. And so we've asked Brother Gregory to give us a quick PowerPoint presentation to explain his initiative. And the Grand Lodge of Quebec is supporting this. And we wanted to throw this out to see if there was any interest from other jurisdictions. So without further ado, Brother Gregory, would you take the floor?
Thank you very much, Most Worshipful Brother David. And thank you, most worshipful brethren and distinguished brethren, brethren all. Most worshipful Brother Barron, would it be possible for you to allow me to share my screen?
It's just worshipful, but you are allowed to share your screen. Go ahead.
So I'm still not able, but it will come, I'm sure.
Yep.
Here we go. Thank you very much. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
All right. So let me first tell you a little bit about myself. I run a small business in Montreal Canada. I am currently an honorary colonel with the Royal Canadian Artillery, and have initiated a number of projects to support our men and women in uniform service. And I've watched over the course of a number of years with some dismay. I've watched what I think is disconnect between our youth and the pillars of the foundations of our society, our democracy. We live in a difficult world, and our children are distracted. And I think, the world democracy, if you do a little bit of research, the democracy in the world is under stress. In many cases, it's in decline. In fact, it has declined. And there's a good deal of evidence that supports my statement. So I thought, what can I do, as an individual? And so let me share with you a little bit of this journey. I put together an international forum called the International Forum for Peace, Security, and Prosperity. Our mission is to bring together our youth with members, our leaders, academics, and most specifically our military officer cadets, to explore the foundations of peace and democracy. What is it that underpins our society? And really, if you take a look at our lodge, speaking from the perspective of my experience in my lodge, our lodge is a model of tolerance and respect and civility, where there is a reasonableness in our discussion, even the discussion we've heard today. And most worshipful Brother Smith said, we have to keep a watchful eye on this. And I agree. I agree. We need to keep a watchful eye. And I believe strongly that the discussion of peace doesn't need to be political. The discussion of peace is, sort of a universal idea that reasonable citizens, to quote the famous American philosopher, reasonable citizens engage in productive discourse where conflicts are, according to our tenets, dealt with peaceably. And so this is the whole notion. We believe that there is a narrative in the world that is counterproductive. It's people actually are contemplating the destruction of institutions that enable our peaceful society without regard. So the issue for us is help our youth, specifically bring our youth together with officer cadets so that our youth understand the role of our military and our peace officers, our men and women in uniformed services, so that they understand that the role of these individuals in Western liberal democracies is fundamental to the maintenance of our peace. So what we've done is brought together, I had two founding countries, the Canadian Armed Forces, through Major General Atkinson at the Canadian Defence Academy and the Vice Chief of Defence Staff at the Italian Armed Forces, both joined together with me in creating this forum. We have now reached out to the countries that you see here: Cyprus, Denmark, France, Germany, Latvia, Romania, Slovakia, Spain, Ukraine, and the United States, and another half a dozen that will sign on in the next few days. All of their military colleges are coming together on February 18th and 19th. In 4 panels, they will be discussing the role of our military and the foundations of our democracy. What does it take? Now, we've also had a good deal of success attracting other dignitaries. So you'll notice NATO will be represented as well as the United Nations. And we have reached out within Sicily, where the conference is being held physically. We've reached out to their high schools and high schools across Canada. The high schools in Sicily are participating in a contest where the 3 most successful presentations will be presented at the conference. And these presentations really just do what I said, explore what are the foundations of peace in our society, and more particularly, what role do our military play in maintaining the structures that are so vital to our prosperity. The fundamental concepts that hopefully will be revealed here is that in the absence of justice, there can be no peace. And it's only with security that we can see a relative justice be established. And along with peace, then our hope and expectation is we would see prosperity. The opportunity for any Grand Lodge or lodge to participate with us is very simple. We have a contest, and I'm currently the only funder of this project, my business, and I'm grateful that we're able to do it, but we can't do it alone. We will need to raise funds if we're going to see the expansion of our outreach to youth. For instance, in Romania, we've already said we'll find the money to reach out to their high schools. In Denmark, we made the offer, but they said no problem. We'll take care of it ourselves. But you can see by the numbers in front of you, this is not a massively expensive operation. To run the conference for me this year, my expected costs are only going to be 40,000 Canadian dollars. And that's including the special technology and 6-way interpretation, live interpretation. So, of course, you can participate in many ways. I would invite you to register and witness the conference for yourselves to judge. But my full belief is that, and I think most worshipful brother Shand said it. In every long journey, what really counts is that first step. And I can tell you clearly, I'm just a simple citizen. But if I truly live a Masonic life, then I stand for something, and I stand for what's right. And I'm trying to do my part here. And I know that other brethren here on the line and in my lodge are going to stand with me. Thank you all for letting me have this opportunity. Most worshipful Brother David.
Yes, thank you, Brother Gregory, for that presentation. So brethren from the other jurisdictions, the Grand Lodge of Quebec really believes in this program. We want to put our money where our mouth is. And the Grand Lodge of Quebec would be willing for any of the jurisdictions that want to participate in this, will gladly, no strings attached, take care of the third prize. I can't afford the first prize, but we'll take care of the third prize for your jurisdiction in your jurisdiction's names. No strings attached for any of the jurisdictions that are interested in participating in this. You can communicate with me through perhaps Worshipful Brother Barron can make sure that they have my email address. Just to indicate your interest, and we'll take care of the logistics at that level. So with that, brethren, thank you for your attention, and I'll return the floor back to the moderator.
Thank you, Most Worshipful David and Brother Gregory.
Thank you.
Sounds very interesting. I'd like to turn now to the Grand Lodge of Manitoba. Most Worshipful Fardeau, please.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Myers. First of all, Brother Gregory, most worshipful Brother Mark, fantastic presentation and great initiative. I think that's a great program that you're trying to start, and working with our military and youth programs is a fantastic opportunity. They're very strong in Canada. I know that. So if you would do me a favor, though, would you please send me the slideshow presentation to my email address, if that's possible, so I could share this with our jurisdiction? I'd like them to hear some of this as well. So with regards to programming, I think, and what we're doing for youth, I think one of our ways of doing this is kind of through outreach, and that's our outreach of providing scholarships. And with that process, when we provide the scholarship, providing explanation of what Masons do and what our values are, so that when people see this, and they get a youth gets a scholarship or a program, they see what we're doing in our organization. I think we can't hide ourselves under in the background. We've been so, I don't want to say secretive, but we've never really had to start to. We should have been working on how we get the next generation joining us at this point in time, and getting our message out to youth, and what our value systems does for youth at this point in time. Our Dimole and Job's daughter programs in the province, even though they are small, they are continuing to grow. And I've seen some great leadership activities happening, especially under the COVID situation, where I would say they are the youth are whizzes at technology, and are doing so many things that way at this point in time to increase the relationships and to share what we're doing here. We have tried also in Manitoba. We have one scholarship at one of the universities that deals with human rights, and we try to use that as a vehicle to platform to share our messages and in that situation. So we do have an opportunity to share this information and grow and do this. And we still have lots of work to do, but I think it's important for the future of the craft and the community at large that we continue our efforts to do this and look for ways to strengthen those relations between the youth and Freemasonry together, get them from that to perhaps they would like to join our fraternity in the future. Thank you, Brother Beatty and Brother Myers.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Fardeau. And I'd like to turn to the Grand Lodge of South Africa now for your response.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Myers. I don't know where Most Worshipful Brother Edwards has disappeared to, but maybe he's having a bandwidth problem. Firstly, congratulations to Most Worshipful Brother David and also to Worshipful Brother Gregory. I think it's a fantastic program, and I'm just sorry that we hadn't thought about that. You know, in South Africa, of course, we've had the Boy Scouts organization that's been very strong in the country for many, many years. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, and correct me if I do go wrong, that Powell initiated that at the siege of Kimberley during the South African War in about 1899 or 1900. But be that as it may, unfortunately, we had a lecture, I think it was from a very distinguished brother from Australia some time ago, some years ago, where the Boy Scout program in Australia is very closely aligned to Freemasonry, and it's almost a feeder school, if you can call it that, to Freemasonry. Unfortunately, that has not happened in South Africa, and I think there are various reasons for that. We have, you'll be happy to know, now just qualified to start our first Demolay chapter, which we're going to do within the next coming months. But coming back to the program that Worshipful Brother Gregory was talking about, I think Most Worshipful Brother Fardeau has asked if he could send the details to his email address. I wonder if you could not send it to all our email addresses, because I really do think it's a wonderful program, and it's something that we can consider supporting. I see Most Worshipful Brother Edwards is back, so perhaps he'd like to take over from me because I know he's got something prepared for that. But if he doesn't, thank you very much, Worshipful Brother Myers.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Smith, and Most Worshipful Edwards, take it on.
No, I'm not sure I was specifically had that in mind, most of it. We're very much looking forward to the Demale chapter. It's going to fall under our ancient and accepted Scottish Rite section, but it's exciting, and I have no doubt it's going to be very successful. I think from South Africa's point of view, we need to understand South Africa is very unique in many ways. 25 years ago, as we all well know, we broke away from apartheid and we had our first ever democratic elections. The country is still working its way through that. We still have a large amount of racial prejudice in various areas. Regrettably, while there's been some tremendous highs, there's also been some horrific lows. There's been an enormous amount of corruption in the recent past. And this is being addressed by the current government, but nonetheless, it's left a stain on the society as we know it. Freemasonry, by its very nature, is an organization that practices tolerance and does not pay credence to a man's religion, political beliefs, color of skin, or anything of that sort. It pays credence to the quality of the man. And that is an example that we can have an enormous impact on the society in South Africa with. It also practices fundamental principles in terms of truth and honesty and behavior, etc. And our challenge is really to get that out and to get that into as much of society as possible, because the future generations, I believe, are looking for that sort of example. Most Worshipful Brother Myers, thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Edwards, and it's just worshipful, but thank you. If we can now turn to the Grand Lodge of Lebanon, Most Worshipful Timinian, please.
Well, most worshipful Mark David, I congratulate you on this program. It's awesome, and I don't know, Brother Gregory, I don't know what to tell you. It's an awesome thing. It's the combination of involving the military with the youth, not only educating them on what they need to know, also promoting patriotism and belongingness to the country. That is an awesome thing to do. We lack that in a lot of countries, at least, let me say that. We lack that in Lebanon as well. Unfortunately, we do not have any youth organizations as of yet in Lebanon. So our concentration is more and more on the educational in terms of adults. And we are actually taking on slowly but gradually subjects that are open out there. First of all, we're starting with subjects that are of interest, and we're attacking some of the taboos that are out there. So in Lebanon, we're always proud of our cedar tree. We tell it the whole world, and if people don't hear it enough, we keep saying it, that we are the land of the cedars, and the cedars that we have in Lebanon are the cedars of God. If you don't believe me, check the Bible. So, and because of all the political turmoil in the last 100 years, or actually the last 450 years in Lebanon, we had a lot of Lebanese who actually had to leave Lebanon to seek either refuge for political, religious, whatever differences or persecutions that they were going through. So we call those people our own cedars. So not necessarily the Cedros Libanos that is actually indigenous of the mountains in Lebanon. We have cedars in the form of people around the world. And the elite of these people around the world are the Freemasons in the world. So it is my task as the Grand Master of Lebanon, and because of the slogan that I adopted 2020-2021, which is Builders Without Borders, is to seek those cedars wherever they are dispersed around the world and knock on their door and pull something that will benefit Lebanon and the people in Lebanon through them. So it gives me great honor to announce to you, one of the cedars actually works very closely with the Most Worshipful Mark David. One of the cedars is planted in is the Deputy District Grand Master of section number, I believe, district number 4, if I'm not mistaken. And he will be, he's a PhD, and he is a very respected Freemason in Quebec and elsewhere. And he will be presenting us with a lecture on February 6th, which is next Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. in Beirut time, taking on a taboo, one of the taboos about Freemasonry. Are Freemasons Illuminati? So from this podium right here, I strongly invite you to attend. It should be interesting. We do have unlimited participants. And if anybody is interested in joining us and seeing what the Cedars of Lebanon can do from outside Lebanon, please be my guests. Just send me an email, grandlodgeoflebanon@gmail.com, and I will be more than happy to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Dominion. We'll see you there. And I'm sorry, I skipped over the Grand Lodge of Bulgaria, so now I'd like to call on Most Worshipful Mateev. Please forgive me.
Well, thank you very much, Worshipful Brother Myers. The Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons in Bulgaria, in its brief history, continues to follow the way of the Grand Lodges with the development of youth programs in structures like Demolem, Job Daughters, Rainbow Girls, Amaranth, and others. But actually we are participating in the all association and programs for Masonic one against crime, aggression, drugs, and so on in middle schools, which is very popular. The next initiatives we are doing at the moment is we are mentoring a program, the Hour of Code. There was shown some units like this one. So starting from the initial age till the middle school of youth, we are trying to explain what is this, how it is work, what we are doing in this. Thanks of big leaders like Obama, like Bill Gates, which are participating on the same program on the base of voluntary. Nevertheless, of all these things, with a couple of talking with European Grand Lodges, we also starting to think about creation of cooperation on a mentor type between the Grand Lodge, our Grand Lodge, and existing school clubs, Green Patrols, Bulgarian Tourist Movement Organization, and others. I can say frankly and hardly, at the moment, Most Worshipful Brother David and Worshipful Brother Gregory has one more participant in program. Since I am become an honorable professor of Naval Academy in Bulgaria, you must be sure that I shall participate immediately when I receive your presentation on my email. In our 25 years of history, doesn't give us the ability to have a ready concept on this issue. This is why we search for international support, especially in the current situation. We are all in, and we receive it. Thanks to our brethren from Quebec. Thank you very much, Worshipful Brother Myers.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Mateev. And now I'd like to turn to the Grand Lodge of New York. Most Worshipful Sardone, please.
That was a very impressive presentation. There's no doubt in what people know about me and how I view DMLA and the other organizations that we sponsor for youth. I'm very impressed with the tie-in with the military because I am a military believer. There is an opinion that when we had this thing in the United States called the draft, where everybody who was 18 got this notice, and sometimes you were automatically you either went into the military or you went to jail. And there's a saying or there's a feeling that those who went into the military came out with some more respect of things. Today, it's all voluntary. I get it. I don't know. It's just an opinion. I was in the military during that period of time and during the voluntary period of time. And the military did teach tremendous amount of respect. But, you know, we still wholeheartedly support our youth organizations. We find that many of them do join Masonry and become better leaders in society. So that presentation was extremely impressive, and I'm happy to see so many different countries, and including ours, leaning in with their military colleges and schools.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Sardone. I'd like to turn to the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts now.
Thank you, Worshipful. We support the Malayan Rainbow, and we encourage those organizations. In fact, as a Grand Lodge, we're encouraging all the DMLAs, active DMLAs, when they turn 18, that if they join our fraternity, we will pay their college dues until they are, we'll pay their fraternal dues in the fraternity until they graduate college, as a way to bring them in and allow them to participate. Beyond that, though, on April 30th of this year, the Grand Lodge of Masons of Massachusetts, and I believe that the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Vermont are going to do this with us. We have asked all 219 lodges of Massachusetts to buy a flat of 40 sapling trees, which are costing us very little, about $50 a flat. And we are going to give those flats of trees to the 4th grade class of the local elementary schools, with a flyer from the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts and the local lodge. And we're going to ask them to take that tree and plant it with their mother or father somewhere in their yard, somewhere that's important to them. And in doing so, we think that we're going to be able to encourage family values within the community. And we're also going to be able to outreach to a lot of men and plant our seed in the minds of children. Who are these people that just gave us this tree that's growing in our yard? And hopefully some of the fathers will come around and look into the fraternity as well from this. And we'll help the environment at the same time. So we're looking outside the box at ways to engage the family, because we really believe that if we can engage the family, we can engage the youth. And that's our hope. That's the direction we're going. Most Worshipful Brother David, Brother Gregory, tremendous program. As a military-minded man myself who has spent some time there, I'm very thrilled with it. I'll look forward to receiving the PDF so that I can present it to the Grand Master in Massachusetts. And there'll certainly be a conversation at the Board of Directors meeting later this week about that if I have it in time. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your morning with me, or your afternoon, as the case may be.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Calverton. Have a great day. I'd like to now call on Grand Lodge of Ontario, please.
Well, thank you, brethren, for providing me with the opportunity to speak on these subjects. I've not been asked by the Grand Master to be his representative, so the comments are my personal comments. And I support our Grand Master in all of the Masonic education initiatives that he is going through presently virtually. In addition to the youth organizations that have been stated that we support here in Ontario, we also, on the large virtual meetings, have invited potential applicants to come online, and that has proved quite successful. We have Grand Lodge committees that have attended universities and spoken about Masonry to university groups. We have sponsored on occasion high school awards nights, where the Masonic Lodge goes personally to the awards day at the high schools, buys and presents the awards to all of the students, and at the same time discusses what Masonry is all about on those occasions. I recall as master in 1975 inviting the Boy Scouts to attend a lodge meeting to tell us what they were all about. Of course, with the intention of them being in the lodge, finding out what we are all about. A father and son night has proved useful on some occasions. I believe a few years ago, the Grand Lodge of Newfoundland and Labrador started and constituted a university lodge that I believe is quite successful. And I suppose my final comments in closing would be that to perpetuate our fraternity, all we really need to do is replace ourselves. And then Freemasonry will survive and thrive, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Shand. And now I'd like to call on the Grand Lodge of India. Right Worshipful Paul, please.
Thank you, Brother Myers. The youth are the future is, of course, never in doubt. As far as the Grand Lodge of India is concerned, it has been of some concern that we tend to be heavily skewed on the wrong side of 50 or maybe even 60. So we are looking at inducting more and more youngsters. The best way, of course, would be a father-son relationship where the father brings in the son at some opportune moment. And we have reached out to have lodges which are centric to youngsters and their interests. So you have an adventurer's lodge, you have a golfer's lodge, you've got a lodge which meets only in the forests. So you have varied interests so that the youth are attracted to such lodges, and we find that is bringing in a lot of youngsters. As far as involvement with the Army is concerned, I would say that we don't really have a direct program with the Army, except that we have specific lodges for retired armed personnel also. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Paul. And now I'll hand it back to Worshipful Baron.
Thank you, Brother Myers, and thank you all responders. Particularly thank you to our Right Bishop Brother Yeager, who's been so very patient with us. It's been an interesting afternoon. I now would like to call the Deputy Grand Master of Arizona, the Right Worship Brother Randy Yeager, who's also recovered from COVID, to make a closing comment and declare this 10th International Masonic Town Hall closed. Right Worship Brother Yeager.
Certainly. Thank you so much, brothers. It's wonderful to be back with you, and it's wonderful to see all of you. I will say, because we are running late, I will run through my comments very quickly because I value all of your time. I chose today to comment on a topic underpinning great issues facing us today rather than continuing our discussions on those topics. I recently read an article discussing the difference between nice and being kind. The two terms, while often considered synonymous, were interpreted very differently. Ultimately, being nice was equated to the superficial act of being polite, regardless of your motivation. Being kind was summed up as taking concrete actions to help others, regardless of how you act while doing so. The article was a good read, but I could not help but be amused by the thought that only in today's world would we be spending time differentiating these two terms. For centuries, Freemasonry has been teaching men about faith, hope, and charity, brotherly love, relief, and truth, without ever a mention of the difference between being nice or kind. Clearly, the world is still in need of the gentle but not idle influence of Freemasonry, and we must, each one of us, continue to be agents of change in society. I hope that each one of you will continue to live in grace, honor, truth, and let your light shine bright. May the great architect hold and keep you in health and safety until we meet again. And with that, I now declare the 10th International Masonic Town Hall to be closed.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Brother Yeager. With that, I want to thank our responders and our senior brethren for their time. Thank you for all that you do and your ongoing support and participation in joining the the 10th International Masonic Town Hall. A special thank you, as always, to my two co-hosts, Worship Brother Myers and Worship Brother Beatty, but more importantly, all of you. Thank you for all that you do. I hope it was a valuable experience and that you will join us again for the 11th International Masonic Town Hall, which will be in February. The date is to be advised, but normally it's the last Saturday. I wish you all well in your families, your jobs, your businesses, and communities. And let us continue, as Freemasonry is a very old human experiment in tolerance. All that is left for me to say is to you brethren in Canada and the United States, good afternoon. The brethren in South Africa and Bulgaria in particular, good evening. To the brethren in India, good night. And as always, I vow to the divine in you. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Peace be unto you. God bless, stay safe, and be kind to others. Happy New Year, everyone. Before you go, remember it's always darkest before the dawn. And everything will be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, then it's obviously not the end. If you or someone you know have been impacted by this pandemic, I leave you with Ecclesiastes chapter 3. There is a reason and a time for everything under the sun. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. And with that, this is Jennifer Love Hewitt.